My name is Tessa Lev. I'm the marketing manager here at Artem Technologies, and we are excited to be joined by our partners at Nutanix today. We've had a really great partnership with Nutanix for more than a decade, and I know there's been a lot of shifts going on post Broadcom-VMware, and so we're joined here today by Adam to go ahead and give us a rundown of some new virtualization strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, Tessa. Hey, everybody. Really looking forward to sharing a little bit about Nutanix with you guys and just talking about what's been going on into the market. Just quick check. Everyone is seeing my slides and I'm coming through loud and clear.
You're good, Adam.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Thanks, Tessa. So yeah, today we're gonna, I want to talk about what we've been seeing, right? And want to share, my experience, what I've been seeing. The virtualization landscape really has fundamentally changed in the last 18 to 24 months. We're seeing changes from a cost perspective, from just vendor perspectives, and just shifts within the industry towards a need for more diversity from a virtualization perspective. And that really sets the table for a great conversation about Nutanix, about Nutanix HV, which is the Nutanix hypervisor, and providing customers really an alternative to some of the more legacy solutions that are out there, but still a robust virtualization platform. There are of course some new entrants out there as well, and Nutanix has been supporting customers for I think about 15 years. But I'm a technical account manager at TD SYNNEX. I am 100% focused on Nutanix. Been working on Nutanix the last 5 years. So really, again, appreciate this opportunity just to share a little bit with everyone. So on the agenda today, really four key bullet points. So want to just talk a little bit about that market landscape. We've already shared a little bit about that, so we'll probably go through that quickly. And I think there's no surprises with what I'll be sharing, what we'll be talking about. And then want to talk about the Nutanix Cloud Platform. I know we're talking about HV as an alternative from a hypervisor perspective, from a virtualization perspective, but Nutanix really is a platform solution to help modernize infrastructure, help simplify infrastructure. So it'll be a little bit of an introduction. Folks that are familiar with Nutanix, I hope it's not too repetitive, but for folks that are new to Nutanix, just want to give you that good introduction. And then we're going to talk about some innovations coming out of Nutanix. Nutanix just had their big annual conference last month in Chicago, and lots of exciting things, even as we think beyond Broadcom. We need to be thinking about the future, kind of 5 years out. There's so much going on around containerization, around AI. So want to share some of those highlights with everyone on the call today. And then finally, I do want to leave you with some resources, some places where you can learn more. Of course, work with the Artem team who know Nutanix really well, and we here at Nutanix and at TD SYNNEX, we're here to support you as well. And then of course, time permitting, we'll open up for Q&A. If you've got any questions, just throw it in the Q&A section or the chat session, and happy to address any questions as they come up. But if we leave them to the end, that would be perfectly fine as well. So as we dive in, the IT landscape has just been facing lots of changes, and that presents lots of challenges. And I don't think this slide here, just talking about kind of what we're seeing at more of a 30,000-foot view, is new to anyone, right? Like change is the one constant that we can all depend on, and with change comes complexity. So in this first pillar, just managing cloud complexity, we've got multiple domains with where we're operating our IT infrastructure, whether that's on-prem and more traditional data center environments, maybe 3-tier environments. Some of us may even be still in physical infrastructure for that matter. And then, up in the public cloud, lots of folks are migrating workloads to the public cloud or to service providers. And then, we're of course all experiencing this, rapid growth and explosion of, applications and data. That's really redefining the enterprise and the data center, and just the overall infrastructure. And this, kind of little, BDs in space and all these dots connected really represents that and all that complexity. And then, of course, in this next pillar, just protecting against new security risks. So threats are becoming more sophisticated. They're becoming more frequent, and just being able to have the ability to support our customers, support our own data from a security perspective is just, it's top of mind, and it just presents additional challenges. And then finally, thinking about more into the future and, modernizing our applications more from a, how we can adopt, cloud native, application development, kind of going from that more traditional, quote unquote, monolith type application to, cloud native, and how can I operate both my existing, virtualized applications and data with, within this cloud native space, and being able to navigate that. So lots of challenges there. But then honestly, so this is kind of like what we've been dealing with. But on top of all of this, we've just seen this huge challenge and really this hurricane, as we've been calling it, with what's been going on with Broadcom and the acquisition of VMware. And so not at this point, we're now 18, 24 months into this, and I think it's no surprise to anyone that this is what we're talking about, especially talking about Nutanix. And so we've all felt this disruption firsthand, and it's been everything from changes from a licensing perspective. We've seen this elimination of being able to select standalone products, and kind of pick and choose what we want to use. And now what we're starting to see is we're not starting to see what has happened is this consolidation of going from, say, 5,000 individual SKUs down to maybe 3 or 4 bundles. And this has just led to tremendous disruption. These are just some news stories on here, but it's really the elephant in the room is what we're here to talk about, and kind of this how Nutanix is helping folks navigate through this storm. If I reflect on just my personal experience, as I mentioned, I've been supporting Nutanix now for about 4 years, and over the last 18 to 24 months, these 3 pillars of information I'm sharing here, what's on the slide, this is what I've been hearing, what I've been seeing from customers, right? So that disruption within Broadcom, and really loss of control from a cost and the predictability of where that infrastructure is going, and the challenges around that are really creating a lot of conversations where customers are looking for alternatives, and Nutanix is of course a natural alternative there for folks. But equally, we're seeing conversations around, data and infrastructure sprawl. One really good example of this, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, one of our partners, had a customer that was a healthcare customer, a couple different hospitals and a variety of, clinics, kind of spread out. I think it was across a couple different states. And they just, they had this kind of unwieldy infrastructure sprawl. I think they had everything from, there was, VxRail to, traditional 3-tier architectures at one location, and then another location, a different storage provider with physical servers. So, I think folks are really looking for a way to, unify, their infrastructure and their platform. And then, of course, lots of customers are asking about, hey, how can I support these more modern applications within, that are containerized using Kubernetes, and then, of course, AI and things like GPU-enabled nodes, and how can Nutanix help me there? And the answer is 100% yes. We can support that. We can help that. But I would say 85 to 90% of those conversations that I've been having, and I actually went back and looked, it's probably a couple hundred specific or unique customer situations. 85, 90% of those conversations were around Broadcom. And many folks have made the decision to migrate to Nutanix as an alternative solution. And we're going to talk a lot more about, how Nutanix helps folks there. But many customers decided to, renew and buy themselves some times or really stay with the status quo. Going with some of these bundles, like say like a VCF, gave customers, some features that, really they didn't need, but they wanted to stick with what they knew, what they were familiar with, because it just, some of the perceived and real challenges of migrating to something new were greater, or that perceived risk was greater than sticking with Broadcom and spending a little more money. So for those customers, that have decided to, really kind of stay with the status quo, what we're seeing is, another kind of wave of a decision point that folks are going to have to be thinking about, right? And so VCF 9 is, it's available today. But if you've just gone with, say, like VVF or VCF 8, it was more of a or of a kind of re-entitlement of licenses, and how those individual components like vSphere and vCenter, et cetera, vSAN were bundled together. But as we move into VCF 9, we're actually starting to see some, new technology constructs, new ways of, deploying the architecture, new requirements. And I think customers are going to be back at that decision point where they're going to look at an alternative. Do I want to, go through more changes and more disruption going to this platform, or do I want to look at, some alternatives? And, this date at the very top, so this real and perceived cost of change, for October 27th, that October 2027 date is there because VCF 8 end of general support is in October 2027. So, honestly, I think the time is now to be looking at infrastructure and consider alternatives. There's going to be quite a bit of disruption, going to VCF 8, especially if you're, if you just kind of move to VCF, moving to VCF 9, yeah, I just think there's going to be a lot of challenges with that. So, 2 years, and actually now it's about 18 months. Sounds like a lot of time, but honestly, when we're talking about IT infrastructure, that's going to happen within a blink of an eye. So really now is the time to be having those conversations, to be looking at, kind of your current infrastructure. What's that roadmap look like to, migrate to, an alternative, or what are some other alternatives? And with Nutanix, we are really I'd say the number one alternative to a vSphere environment. And just to give an introduction to Nutanix, and I'll talk about some data points, and we'll dive into the platform in just a second. But lots of so first, it's pronounced Nutanix. Some folks have said Nutnix, which sounds like a a breakfast cereal, and Nutanix is a infrastructure software company that gives customers the ability to gives customers a platform to run their applications and data, anywhere, whether that's on-prem, at the edge, on the public cloud. And within this platform, and when we say applications, we're talking about giving customers the ability to support virtualized environments, containerized environments, or containerized applications. And when we say applications, it's everything from databases to general purpose server virtualization to VDI, virtual desktop infrastructure, whether that's with Citrix or Omnissa or someone like that. Nutanix is giving customers the ability to run all that on our platform. And just to give some data points about Nutanix, Nutanix was founded in 2009. Our fiscal year 25 revenue was $2.5 billion. So and I call that out, just Nutanix is not two guys in a garage fighting over a soldering iron. Today we support approximately 30,000 global customers, over half of which are on the Fortune 500. We're supporting verticals, everything from financial services to government and retail and healthcare. I've worked with everyone from the world's largest apple orchard in the Pacific Northwest to Nutanix supporting Wells Fargo and everyone in between. If there's one number on here, I like to make sure folks think about when they think about Nutanix. It's this our NPS score. So NPS stands for Net Promoter. Net Promoter is a industry-wide metric for measuring customer success, customer satisfaction, customer loyalty. These are those surveys that we all get, right? Where they say, "Hey, are you happy with Nutanix? Would you recommend it to your friends and family?" And the scale of these surveys of this scoring mechanism is -100 to +100, and Nutanix has had a 90 plus on average for for a decade. The nearest competitor, I think VMware was mid 40s, Broadcom much lower than that, and even TD SYNNEX where I work, I think we're high 40s, and we do a pretty good job. So this 90 plus on average over 10 years really is attributed to the culture at Nutanix and really the customer being at the center of their orbit. And I think a further manifestation of that is really the support organization. So we're all quick to just kind of talk about our gripes with support within IT infrastructure, but that's not the case with Nutanix. Nutanix has an award-winning support organization. I think there's this anecdote that 9 out of 10 support cases are resolved by the are handled and resolved by that engineer that took that first call. So it's really important as we're thinking about not just capabilities and the ability to support our data, but also from a day two operations and just having a partner that's going to support the business as you go. So at the end of the day, what Nutanix is providing customers is one platform to run applications and data anywhere. I've mentioned that, and IT, as we saw earlier, can be very complex. We've got traditional infrastructure, we've got data and applications running up in public clouds, we're running on virtual machines, we're running on containers. Nutanix is really simplifying infrastructure to give customers a consistent platform to run applications and data wherever they need to run, on-prem, at the edge, across multiple public clouds, or any combination of those. And it doesn't matter if we're running more traditional monolith type of applications or modernized applications. So we give customers the ability to run whatever application they need to and really simplify those operations. And if we think back to just the origin story of Nutanix, how did we get here? And Nutanix really was born out of the early hyperscalers, the public cloud, and the early architects of Nutanix, the founders of Nutanix. Actually, one gentleman in particular was working on the Google, file system, how Google, manages its storage, and they were looking to, bring that type of, technology and simplicity to the enterprise data center, and they looked at enterprises at the time, and really what they saw was, siloed operations and challenges around scalability and things like that. And they came up with this concept called web scale architecture, with how they wanted to deploy the solution to deploy to the Nutanix Cloud Platform. And these six data points that we're looking across this circle are really key tenets to a web scale architecture. So first and foremost, the ability to scale out our infrastructure. So we can start with a single server and kind of scale that out incrementally, and being able to do that simply. Having no single point of failure, high availability, high resiliency, within our infrastructure was non-negotiable, right? So Nutanix infrastructure is self-healing. Again, there is no single point of failure. It's architected, it's designed, it's sized to support that. And then everything needs to be 100% software defined. So no reliance on any, special hardware components, like FPGAs or ASICs or anything like that. All the intelligence is within the software. And it's essentially a software product that Nutanix is providing. And that gives us the ability to deploy on standard x86 servers, right? Nutanix does offer its own brand of server, which is on Supermicro servers. But you can deploy Nutanix on Dell, on HPE, on Lenovo. There are validated platforms that really give customers, freedom to choose, how they want to deploy their infrastructure with the Nutanix cloud platform. And then finally, through the software, defined, solution, software-defined data center, there's quite a bit of automation within the platform. So a lot of the complexity is really abstracted away, and folks find Nutanix to be much simpler to run and to manage. Through this web scale architecture, essentially what we're doing is we're bringing that cloud-like experience into our private into a private cloud on-prem. So having the ability to have one-click operations, we're not having to dive deeply into command line and the plumbing, so to speak, of our infrastructure really simplifies things for folks. Having the ability to pay as you grow, having that experience where I can spin up infrastructure. All I need is a credit card, right? And I can spin up VMs and storage and do all that in short order. Nutanix gives us the ability to do that. We can, start small. Typically, we're starting with a 3-node cluster, scale from that. And when we, go through sizing conversations, we're really looking to size based off of what you need today, not thinking about, hey, how much storage am I going to need, 3-5 years from now? And then, rapid time to market. So being able to deploy applications within minutes. So it's very simple and easy to spin up a VM. And then if I extend that out, even from a deployment perspective, Nutanix arrives pre-imaged. We rack and stack, we plug in power, plug in top of rack. We can have VMs running on a Nutanix cluster in 45 minutes, to an hour. So it's a very much, simplified task and gets us up and running very, very quickly. Just looking at time. Yeah, so Nutanix is really known for pioneering hyper-converged infrastructure. And HCI is where we're collapsing all those components of the data center into a single simplified solution and distributing that out across multiple nodes, relying on local storage. And Nutanix is really known for pioneering this. And this is what we're doing today for hybrid multi-cloud environments. So breaking down silos of, hey, how do I have that hybrid environment, and then how do I have the ability to simply move apps and data from one cloud to another. We're giving customers the ability to do that. And then I would even extend this out to say we're further breaking down silos around containerization and AI applications on top of the platform. This is the Nutanix Cloud Platform. This is the components. This is the architecture slide, so to speak, of Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure. And just to talk through what we're looking at here quickly, at the very base of our offering is Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure. This is that foundational HCI component of Nutanix. So this provides us our virtual compute, our AOS storage, virtual networking, disaster recovery, security, all those capabilities. We can take NCI and extend that out to the edge or the public clouds, and we can deploy Nutanix on top of, we can deploy Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure on the public cloud on what we call NC2 or Nutanix Cloud Clusters. That's essentially NCI running on bare metal in the public cloud. As we move up the stack, customers have some options that they can add. I like to think of these as platform services, but more so as Lego pieces to enhance capability and functionality of Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure. So we've got unified storage for file and object and block data storage services. We've got data services specific for Kubernetes and works in conjunction with our Nutanix Kubernetes platform. And then our database service is another platform service that can be added. And again, these are there for you to add today or in the future on the platform. And Nutanix Database Services gives us a simplified way to manage databases, patching, deploying, upgrading, and we support the top major database engines such as Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, MongoDB, and then Nutanix Enterprise AI, which is how we're helping customers really operationalize large language models within their IT environments. So we've got validated LLMs that can be imported in from Hugging Face or NVIDIA NIMs. There's strong partnerships with those companies, and it's a way that we can really operationalize AI ops within the environment. So kind of moving from these more science experiments to operational AI applications that are driving value to the business, and IT being able to manage that and deploy endpoints to developers to really simplify those types of operations. And then on the as we move up on top of these platform services, we have Nutanix Central, which is really how we manage our infrastructure. So Prism is how we manage Nutanix, provides APIs, identity management, all that functionality. Essentially, we're connecting in through HTML5 browser, and can manage one Nutanix cluster or many Nutanix clusters from one single console. I like to think of it as kind of the eyes and ears of Nutanix. And then Cloud Manager, kind of moving down the line here. I like to think of Cloud Manager, this is supporting more day two operations and really enhancing out the functionality and capabilities of the entire Nutanix Cloud platform. So it gives us self-service capabilities, automation orchestration, there's cost governance capabilities for just managing costs across our infrastructure. And then our Nutanix Kubernetes platform for managing Kubernetes clusters, many Kubernetes clusters, so fleet management, security, and then gaining the capabilities of Nutanix Cloud Infrastructure underneath that to support all those data services within our Kubernetes platform. And then Data Lens for helping us with ransomware attacks and monitoring our data. It's a great platform for enhancing security and and managing within those capabilities. At the very top of the stack, at the end of the day, what we're supporting customers with is supporting their applications, right? So we can support any application on top of the Nutanix Cloud Platform. So that's everything from enterprise applications such as SAP HANA or Epic Meditech within the healthcare space to virtual desktop environments through Omnissa, Citrix, and others, and then everything in between. So this platform is holistic, but you've got a lot of options and choices. One with getting started, but kind of building it out and giving you that true single platform for a hybrid multi-cloud environment. If we think about why Nutanix and how did we get here and get to this Nutanix Cloud Platform, and I mentioned HCI. This is a more traditional type of infrastructure. This is a three-tier architecture. And just to define some of the anatomy, what we're looking at here, so we've got our storage arrays, our storage controllers, and then our servers that are virtualized, with a hypervisor, and then our VMs on top. And what we've found within this type of infrastructure is, it can be very difficult to scale. As I mentioned before, I may have to think about, hey, I need to add more storage. I need to think about how much storage do I need for the life of that, of that SAN and those storage arrays. So I may need to think about, hey, over the next 5 years, how much data do I need to buy today, for tomorrow? And then there's quite a bit of complexity, with, deploying, managing. We may have different vendors at each, layer of the tier. It can be, actually very expensive within this three-tier architecture. And, at the end of the day, it's just, very inefficient. And so what Nutanix has done is Nutanix said, hey, we don't need that SAN storage. Let's rely on local drives on each server. And then that storage logic that we had, we virtualize that and we put it into what we call a controller VM. And then all the storage is pooled across the cluster. And we get really a scale out architecture that's, distributed. We've got dynamic data placement, so very granular from a metadata perspective. So every piece of data is, captured within metadata, and that helps us from a resiliency perspective, from a data protection perspective. And then we're utilizing what we call data locality so that, each VM is reading and writing locally. So our performance is really at the mercy of, local PCI Express, which is, highly performant. And then the platform is, really designed to be, simple and, there are no silos within a Nutanix architecture. So every node is, has the identical base components. So each node will have a CVM. There isn't like one, domain node or a controller node or, or anything like that. It's really is a, simplified distributed architecture. And then finally, the architecture is designed to be, resilient, highly available. We have what's called replication factor, where we're replicating data across the cluster. And then, as, should a VM go down, a VM will spin up on, another node, and the data will be replicated and self-healed, rewritten within the infrastructure till the issue is mitigated. So all that is, really an automated task for customers. We're not having to really, manage that on a day-to-day basis. The infrastructure is very, resilient and intelligence design into the solution. From a scalability perspective, generally we start with a 3-node cluster for a Nutanix cluster. You can't have a 1-node and a 2-node cluster. You start to lose some functionality and capability from a high availability and fault tolerance perspective. But, we size based on what's needed today. Again, typically folks are starting with a 3-node cluster, and you've got the ability to, add nodes as you need to. So if I need to add additional storage or compute, I can add storage and compute nodes to the cluster. We can add storage only nodes. We can add compute only nodes if the use case and the workload, really defines that. So we've got this ability to, mix and match node types, specific to the Nutanix brand servers on Supermicro. Nutanix is actually supporting, up to 3 generations of nodes. So I can be very incremental from, a refresh perspective. And then, we're not locked into one hardware vendor or another. So you could start on the Nutanix brand of servers, and then you could add in, say, HPE and be, incremental and measured with refreshes. And you've got mobility from a, application and licensing, or from a licensing perspective with Nutanix. So lots of choice, lots of options as we're thinking about how we, can scale HCI. So talking about hypervisor, which, hypervisor diversity was a key topic of today. So Nutanix has what's called AHV, or the Acropolis hypervisor. It is a KVM-based hypervisor. And this Nutanix has been supporting AHV for 11 years and has been investing heavily in its capabilities. So AHV is a modern hypervisor. It's really designed to, support this cloud operating model within the Nutanix Cloud Platform. So it's enterprise ready, it's, performant, and, really simple to use. And what I'll say is AHV is included within Nutanix. So there's no licensing for AHV. And, over the last 11 years, 88% of, those 30,000 customers that I mentioned are deploying Nutanix with AHV. And the remainder of those are on ESXi. There's a slim number of folks on Hyper-V. But that's an important point to make, that customers really do have choice with how they want to virtualize and manage their infrastructure with Nutanix. AHV does support over 1,300 plus applications and solutions that are validated today. I know some of the newer providers out there, that can be a challenge with hey, will my applications run on the platform? When I think about HV from a capabilities perspective, really, I would say the hypervisor is definitely become a bit of a commodity, and it's just a component within the platform. But if we stack up, these different capabilities against, say other alternatives out there, or even say ESX, you'll see that Nutanix HV is really on par with any other hypervisor out there. So, listing some of these, capabilities right here, but if we listed our top 5 required capabilities, you will find that HV does support that. So things like where you may have live migration or vMotion today, Nutanix HV has live migration, so we can support that. Things like affinity, anti-affinity rules, all that capability is designed into the solution and is available. Virtual networking, software-defined networking is part of the overall platform, and it's part of HV. Here, just calling out again some of those 1,300 plus slides. So supporting a variety of different whether it's data protection or virtual desktops or management operations. There's lots and lots of applications that are supporting HV today. And then, a variety of verticals, so specific to, healthcare, mentioned Epic and Meditech, they're right there at the bottom, or Avid within, media and entertainment. Lots of capabilities to support customers on HV. And what we do find that some customers do choose to have a dual vendor strategy. So Nutanix HV and VMware ESXi can operate together within the same environment, and we can actually support cross hypervisor DR. We're not seeing so much of that these days, to be honest, but do like to call out that there is that capability. Lots of customers that were actually running Nutanix on top of ESX are converting, and it's really a simplified task to convert over to do an in-cluster conversion over to AHV. Now, with how we manage Nutanix, I mentioned Prism, and Prism is an intelligent management platform. If we think about that traditional 3-tier architecture, I may be working out of, as an administrator, maybe working out of multiple different types of consoles. I may be logging into vSphere web client for managing VMs or vCenter, and on the storage side, may have a storage console. With Nutanix, we have Prism, and Prism really gives us a simplified single console to manage Nutanix. So it gives us visibility into all of our infrastructure. We can manage a single Nutanix cluster from Prism. We can manage multiple Nutanix clusters from Prism, and many tasks within Prism are one click. So sometimes it's 2 clicks to get to that 1 click. It's a bit of a marketing term, but it really is a simplified task with how we manage our infrastructure. The Prism interface has lots of capabilities. We've got APIs. If you're operating more as, say, infrastructure as code with like a Terraform or Ansible, we can support that. Full role-based access control. We manage all of our backup, snapshots, VM creation, storage management. All of it is within Prism, and it's really a simplified task. It's super simple, super intuitive. I like to give the analogy to folks. It's kind of like if you're an iPhone person, I'm an Android person, and we switch phones for the day. It's really intuitive for me to, I'm going to be able to find the banking app. I'm going to be able to find my email app, really, really quickly. So it really is a simple and intuitive platform with how we can manage our infrastructure. But again, as I mentioned, you can definitely extend that out if you want to, operate more as infrastructure as code. So, I know we just talked a bit about, the hypervisor and just some components of Nutanix, but, at the end of the day, Nutanix really is a platform. So we don't just sell just the hypervisor or just the Prism console. It really starts with our cloud infrastructure, our Nutanix cloud infrastructure, and we can build from that. So there's this rich ecosystem within the platform of, different data services, whether we need to extend out to support, NFS or SMB for files or objects. We have unified storage that can support that. It's just an example. Or if I'm looking to simplify managing my databases, say I've got, Oracle database and Postgres database, and it's taking weeks to get databases deployed to developers, and I want to cut that down by, 60, 70%. Nutanix Database Service really helps accelerate managing databases. And the key point here is just we've got this ability to have this single cloud operating platform through the Nutanix Cloud Platform. And whether that's, on-prem in a private cloud or on the public cloud across multiple clouds, Nutanix really simplifies that in this, platform and gives us a lot of capabilities to build, our infrastructure to essentially support the business, right? The apps, the data that are driving value for the business and not focusing on, that infrastructure. As mentioned, this platform, supports multiple use cases. I've called out a couple of these, but just like to, highlight this slide for some other examples across cloud native or remote branch office deployments, databases. We can run multiple applications and workloads on top of a Nutanix cluster. We can even have multiple clusters to, support single, use cases. Just really depends on needs and requirements. And at the end of the day, Nutanix is giving customers, freedom to choose on a number of domains. So I mentioned, from a hypervisor perspective, we can deploy Nutanix on top of ESX. We can deploy it on top of Hyper-V, but AHV is included, right? There's no licensing, there's no minimum core counts or anything like that for our platform. And but you do have choice with, how you want to virtualize. And then of course, choice from hardware. There's some of the vendors I've mentioned, most of those, but there's many more that we can support. We can support existing hardware infrastructure as well. Choice in cloud providers, choice in, specifics around, containerization and Kubernetes, and then, different, tools and applications to support that and to support the business. Now, a natural question that customers have is, okay, this is great. Maybe we've gone through a Prism demo, really like what they see, really like the simplicity and really see the value. But how do I migrate from, my current environment to an AHV environment? And Nutanix offers their Move tool. This is a free tool for customers to use. I think you can actually download it and try it now if you want. There's a community edition that Nutanix has if you want to give it a try. But Move really simplifies migrating our workloads from one environment into an AHV environment. And it's really simple to use. We're essentially, defining within, so it's a virtual appliance that will run on the cluster, and we go into this virtual appliance and into the application. And in Move, we set our source, we set our target, and we set up a migration plan, and then we execute on that migration plan. And Move will, copy data and seed data throughout the process. It will take snapshots. It is a non-destructive migration process, so you don't lose what you have on your current infrastructure. And then Move, gives us the ability to cut over when we want to, when we choose to, and because we seeded all that data, it really does minimize downtime. So Move is it's an amazing tool to help customers, migrate workloads from, say vSphere to AHV. And the Artem team is, definitely world-class to help customers throughout that process. But, very important to be thinking about that from a migration perspective. Now, I've only got about 14 minutes left. I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I do want to highlight just, innovation is in Nutanix DNA, and I just wanted to share a little bit about, some of the updates that we saw from .next 2026. I know we talked a lot about HCI, talked a lot about the Nutanix Cloud Platform. We've talked a lot about Broadcom and how Nutanix is just a great alternative within those types of environments. There were 39 announcements at Nutanix.next, and I'm not going to read all of these. But some really interesting ones. For example, Cisco Unified Communications. For a really long time, that was a challenge to run on HP on Nutanix, and Cisco has now validated that within a Nutanix environment. Just to highlight, kind of the key themes from .next. So lots of investment around agentic AI and Kubernetes and cloud native applications. I mentioned the Nutanix Enterprise AI platform, and we're really expanding and growing that capability around providing a full stack platform for managing agents. And again, it's that common theme of Nutanix around simplifying these tasks within IT infrastructure. So simplifying, hey, how do I manage agents within my environment in a secure, in a highly available, just all those other tenets that we've talked about on top of the Nutanix Cloud Platform. Lots around hybrid cloud, sovereign control around our data and where we're running data, and supporting additional features around zero copy migrations with VMware, and then lots of updates around our storage services with Nutanix Unified Storage, and I mentioned Data Lens and some enhancements there. But one of the big announcements was partnership with NetApp, and there's been quite a bit of investment and capability and co-engineering to support storage, external storage solutions for customers. And a couple years ago, if you hadn't seen, Nutanix does now support external storage. So we do support Dell PowerFlex. Everpure was announced last year, or Pure Storage. I'm still getting used to Everpure, and Dell PowerStore is in early access. But NetApp was just announced just last month, and that's really exciting. I know I talked a lot about HCI and kind of the origin story of Nutanix HCI and the Nutanix Cloud Platform, and we are still very opinionated about HCI, and we think we still think it's the quickest way to modernize from that traditional three-tier architecture. But Nutanix has been listening to customers, right? We've had I've personally had conversations where, customers love what they see in the platform. They love the simplicity. They love Prism. They love how easy it is to manage infrastructure and, have visibility and manage across all these different domains. But then they ask, hey, what do I do with my external storage? Like, I just invested $4 million in Pure, for example. And I actually had a conversation like that. And it's really difficult for us at Nutanix to say, well, that could be make that your backup target or use it for development. And so Nutanix is partnered with, top storage providers to support, these storage solutions. And I just think that's super exciting, for customers to extend out, this theme of freedom of choice, for customers. So lots happening from a storage perspective. Again, HCI we still think is a fantastic solution for modernizing infrastructure, but you've got the choice to still operate, with your NetApp storage, with your Pure Storage, with your Dell Power Storage, Lenovo ThinkSystems as well. So I think I definitely wanted to share that, and I think that's really exciting with how we can help customers. And this slide right here, this is just highlighting some brands. We're familiar with lots of these. I always get a kick out of seeing Build-A-Bear on here. I think that's kind of funny. But yeah, these are customers that are trusting Nutanix, with their infrastructure. I mentioned over half of the 30,000 customers are Fortune 500, but lots of smaller businesses as well are gaining great benefits from migrating to Nutanix. If I call out JetBlue in particular, and specific to the conversations around AHV, JetBlue was operating with a traditional three-tier vSphere environment, and they started with a single workload, which was VDI running Citrix on top of Nutanix, and that's where they started. And they actually first deployed that on top of Nutanix on top of ESXi, and then they converted that cluster to HV, and there were some concerns, there was some trepidation, around like, hey, are we gonna have to? This is going to be, complex. This is something new, but this quote really, calls it out. It took them less than a week to become comfortable with HV, and HV is a simple solution that had everything that they needed within that single console within Prism, and was non-disruptive to the business, and non-disruptive upgrades through the lifecycle management capabilities. And so, today they're operating the entire infrastructure for JetBlue, on Nutanix. And no, I just think it's a great, use case of somebody that's got tremendous value out of, HV, and not having to pay for, hypervisor licensing, right? It should be part of the platform, and that's what we provide. So as we near the end of, I think I've only got one or two slides left, and I know it's been a lot of slideware today. But why customers win with Nutanix? These are just 4 key points that I'd like to leave you with. So first and foremost, freedom of choice, right? We're not locking you in on what hardware you got to run on. You can, you've got lots of choices there. You've got options and choice from a hypervisor perspective, from how you deploy across multiple clouds, and having mobility to move your Nutanix licensing as you see fit. No minimums, right? From a core count perspective, we're really here to support you along the way. And then next, that one unified platform, right? Nutanix gives us the ability to simply manage across all these different domains, whether that's on-prem, on the cloud, at the edge, and then unifying all these different components. So it's not just about the hypervisor, it's not just about our storage, it's about this unified platform to help you simplify infrastructure and focus on the apps and data that are really what's most important to your business, to your internal customers, and more so to your external customers. And then next, the power of simplicity, right? Talked a lot about simplicity, and if you get hands-on with Nutanix, you'll just see how simple it is to create a VM, how simple it is to create snapshots and send those to a DR site or DR up in the cloud. Everything is very much a simplified task within Nutanix, and that's by design. So we'll definitely, leave you with some resources if you'd like to get hands-on to really experience it. You got to experience it. It's one thing for me to say it; to get hands-on and to experience is another thing. And then finally, this last, pillar right here, customer delight. I talked about that NPS score over the last decade, that NPS of 90, this world-class support organization. I think that's really important to think about, as we think, long-term with, partnering with, a provider, with a, infrastructure software company like Nutanix. And so wherever you're at on your journey, Nutanix is here to help. And these are kind of the 3 areas where we meet customers in the market. So whether you're modernizing applications, you're going from that more traditional 3-tier architecture, into HCI. If you're, extending into the cloud or out to the edge and on your, more on your hybrid cloud journey, Nutanix is here to support you. Or if you're really looking to optimize, within the cloud, you're already in the cloud, you've got huge infrastructure, and you're really looking to just, move applications and data seamlessly across those domains, and really gain efficiencies with that. Nutanix is here to help you. I will say, at least for myself, majority of folks I talk to are in this first pillar, and myself, the Artem team, we're here to help and support you throughout that process. And from a resources perspective and a call to action, I just want to leave you with this slide. So Nutanix has what's called Test Drive. With Test Drive, you can go try Nutanix today, or if you got nothing going on Monday on Memorial Day, take Nutanix for a spin. When you go to Test Drive, when you go to this link, there's lots of different use cases you can try. All those different components within the Nutanix Cloud Platform are there, but I highly recommend checking out these 2. So this one, modernizing your data center, you can see just how simple it is to manage storage, to create VMs, to set up virtual networking within the Nutanix Cloud Platform. And then the other Test Drive I would highly recommend checking out is migrating applications to Nutanix. This is going to pull up that move tool and just show you just how simple it is to migrate from, say, vSphere to Nutanix. And it really is simple. It's setting up your source, it's setting up your target, it's creating that migration plan, seeding the data. And this, I think it's about 15 minutes, and you'll just see just how simple that is. So I welcome you. I invite you to, get hands-on with Nutanix. It's honestly the best way to, experience it and to, take that next step. So with that, I know we've only got about 3 minutes. I think I was a little long-winded on some of those slides, but I really do appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate the Artem team. I appreciate Nutanix for having me come here and just share a little bit with you.